Welcome to Rick Rack Ruby. I'm Laura Cluvo. Today we will be making this patchwork stocking ornament. It's fun and easy, so let's get started. To make the Wintertale stocking ornament, we'll start with the pattern. This pattern is 3 inches wide and it stays 3 inches for about 3.5 inches, and then goes out to form the toe of the stocking, and the total height is almost 7 inches. You can make this. From the pattern, I have cut one foundation. This is from 50 weight Pellon non-fusible interfacing. I've cut lining pieces too. You know, they're right sides together. And then one backing, and the back is cut so that the toe faces to the left. In my case, I prefer my stocking to face the right, the toe to go to the right, and so I cut the back to the left. So we're going to start, we're going to piece this on the foundation. And the first thing to do is our focal image. I have selected this angel right here. She's a small angel and she's facing to the right. And I have a window template, which is 3 1/4 inches wide and 2 1/4 inches tall. And I will draw this and cut it out. It seems like it's really large around the figure, but one thing I've discovered is that if I just cut it 3 and this is 3 inches, I think, because sometimes when I cut this out, it's a little over the edge of the pattern, because I don't like to cut my pattern by mistake. And then sometimes this seems a little short or a little narrow in width. So I just go ahead and give her an extra 1/4 inch. And also remember, she's going to have a 1/4 inch taken off the top and the bottom. And there's going to be stitching. Although it seems like a lot of extra space around her, this is really the best size. 2 1/4 tall and 3 1/4 across. And I have already cut that. So I will place this on the foundation. I like for this to sit in the bend of the stocking right here. And then I'll pin it to secure. And we're ready to sew. Here are the Wintertale fabrics that I have chosen for the stocking. This one is the cuff, and then this pink Happy Holidays, this little ballet print, this red floral. I really, really love this one. And then this one, which is the same as the back, it has stockings, and that's going to be the toe. I'm also going to add decorative stitching and a little bit of trim. So I'll start with the cuff. There's an 1.5 inches above this angel focal point, and I'm just going to stitch across with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then press and fold this back and trim. Here we go. I stitched this with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I folded it up, I pressed it, and now I'm just going to trim this excess. And I'm done with that fabric. Now I'm going to pin this to secure, and I'm going to add a decorative stitch right here above the angel. And I'm going to use a triple zigzag for that. There we go. Now below the angel, I'm going to use this pink fabric, and this has it says Happy Holidays, happy holiday. So I'm not trying to get any particular section of the of this expression, but I do want to make sure I don't have it upside down. So I'm going to place it upside down, face down like that, so that when I flip it over, I can read the sentiment. And it looks like I got Happy Holiday nicely centered, but I'm sure that will be concealed by the trim that I'm going to use. I'm going to stitch this with 1/4 inch, fold it down, and press it. Now I have discovered that for best results, I'm going to trim this out from the edge of the foundation. It doesn't matter how much foundation is there, but just so I can see the edge. And then with my ruler, I'm going to set one side of the measurement right there at 1/4 inch, and this side at 1 3/4 inch. So when I say that, I mean that 1 3/4 inch below that seam. So I can see it 1 and then 1, 2, 3. The 1 3/4 is right here, and it's 1/4 on this side. 1 and then 1 3/4. Then I'm going to draw a line and trim it. Great. I like to have a formula so that I get consistent results. Sometimes I wind up with not enough room down here for the toe, or some are too skinny, and so I like to have a formula. That says Happy Holidays, but I know for sure that I'm going to be adding some trim here, and that will be concealed. But it's better to do the piecing and the decorative stitching before I add the lace. So my next patch is going to be this blue print. I cut a little piece of this print and I tried it all in all directions. So in other words, it could go here, it could go here, here, or here. And I just wanted to be sure that after the piecing was done, like for instance, if I did it this way, this nutcracker would be upside down. And I would like to have, if I have a very prominent character in the print, I would like to try to have him or her right side up. So if I do it from this direction, I'm going to have this nutcracker character right side up. Now the stitching may cut off the top of his head, but I at least have a good intention here. So I'm going to line this up, stitch it with 1/4 inch, press it, fold it down and press it, and then I'll be back. And now once again, I'm going to trim this along the edge, and this is way too much, so I'll cut that off too, just so I can see the shape of the stocking. And then again with my ruler, I'm going to set it with 1/4 inch here. And you can see how this is a nice sharp point. So it's 1/4 inch and then 1 3/4 inches on this edge. That looks good. So I will draw this and cut it. And before I go on, I'm going to do a decorative stitch here. I think I'm going to do a blanket stitch, and I'll be right back. This is actually what I call a triple blanket stitch because it kind of goes back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and it lays a nice thick line, which is nice to see. The next fabric is going to be this this red print, which is, I think, my favorite from the collection. And when I cut this one, it's going to be narrow here and wider here. So it's going to go in the opposite direction. Triangle will go this way. I'm going to just set this down. This doesn't really have a direction, but I just want to be sure that my fabric will cover the foundation. And look at that little nutcracker. He turned out just great, didn't he? You can see his whole face and his torso there. All right, so I'm going to just do 1/4 inch seam allowance and stitch this piece on. Looks like that. And now I'm going to trim along the shape. It doesn't have to be right on the edge, just so you can see the shape of the stocking from the front. And then in this case, I'm going to draw a line 1/4 inch from the seam on this side and 1 3/4. That's from the red seam there. That looks good. I'm going to use my silver pen for this line. I also used a silver pen when I was fussy cutting to trace this shape too. Now I'll cut this on the line, making sure I don't cut through the foundation, of course. Move this up a little bit. Now I will add a feather stitch embroidery to this seam. Now for my final patch on the toe, I'm going to use the stocking print, and I have discovered that with the stockings, if you want them to show, you have to have them pretty high, and you almost want to sew right on that branch right there. So I'm just going to test it. I'm going to set it face down and fold it over just to be sure that I'm going to see some of those stockings. And remember, this bottom edge is 1/4 inch seam allowance down here, so I don't want the stockings way, way low because that'll just be cut off in the seam allowance. I'm going to place them here, and with 1/4 inch seam allowance, I'm just stitching just about right on the branch. Hoping you can see the branch. See the branch? And of course, if you're not using these exact fabrics, then you can have a lot of fun with whatever your collection is. And then I'm just going to trim this around the foundation as usual. And this is our last patch. I will repeat this triple zigzag right here on this seam. I made this one a little shorter than this one because I wanted to be sure that I could still see the stockings. And now, let's not forget, I want to add this trim below the focal point. So right here, and I'm just going to top stitch it. Actually, I think I'll do a little baby zigzag right through that kind of heavy part of the header there. This is Wila wedding lace I got at Joann Fabrics. They usually have it, and they also have it in like a cream color, all kinds of varieties. I use it a lot. So I'm going to just kind of lay that along the seam and stitch it down. There we go. Now I will top stitch all the way around the edge. I'm going to be stitching on the foundation, and I'm going to trim out all the extra fabric from behind. So I have a nice, neat shape. This is loose, so I'm pinning the top and the bottom. And I'll be right back. Here's my back and my 2 linings. So I'm going to put these right sides together and stitch across the straight top edges. And then I'll be back. Now I will open these up and match up the linings. These are the linings and the center seams like this. And then I like to turn the seam allowance toward the main part of the stocking. That seems to work better for me. So fold these edges down, these seam allowances down, and match these up. And then I'll pin all the way around. And I'll leave an opening down here in the foot of the stocking. Matching up those seams right there. And then all the way around. Here we go, this is pinned, and I'm going to start here, back stitch, and stitch all the way around, and then back to here again and back stitch. I'm going to use a scant 1/4 inch seam allowance. It looks like this. I just want to make sure everything is caught and everything looks good. And I'm going to clip these inner corners with my nice sharp Kai scissors. This is the lining. And then this is the front and back. And again, make sure your right sides are together. Then I'm going to use my pinking shears to actually trim this all out. I'm going to do this over my trash can. Makes a mess. There we go. This is all trimmed and ready to turn. I left myself enough of an opening to make it perfectly comfortable. It's about 2 or 2.5 inches, I would say. Anyway, it's easy to reach in. I did not trim or pink or clip the little seam allowance here that I'm going to close up the opening, because I need to have enough of a seam allowance to fold in and stitch. Just to make sure I poke out every little bit of my stocking, I'm going to use a chopstick. Did I show you that? It's a chopstick. And just kind of roll it along the very edge from the inside, just to make sure it's turned all the way out. And then I'm going to press it. That looks good. Before I turn the lining in, I'm going to top stitch this opening closed. I just did a little top stitch. It doesn't have to be neat or perfect. It's going to be way down inside in the lining, and no one will ever see it. Unless they're curious about how you made it. So I'm just tucking that lining in. I'm making sure it goes all the way to the point, to the toe, of the stocking. I kind of like when there's a little hint of the lining showing on the front, just a little edge of it. But if you don't like that, you can just continue to tuck it in. That looks good. Now let's add the hanging loop. I'm just using a ribbon. I have it on a needle. And I'm just going to stitch it through just behind the side seam in the back, through the lining and the back. I want to be sure that this is, sewed securely, because you just might want to put a bunch of stuff in here as a little gift, right? And I wouldn't want it to be too heavy. What do I mean? If you had something in here, I want to make sure that the hanger is going to hold it. And then as a little decoration, I'm just going to tie a bow here on the back part of the loop. So I'll just take a nice long piece of this ribbon, 1/16 inch wide, sort of an ivory color. And first I'll tie it into a knot here, and then a bow. Once the bow is tied, I sort of squeeze it together in the center so that both of the loops go down, and I'm going to trim the streamers. And then I put a little bit of glue right here and kind of squish it and hold it so that the bow will stay sort of flowing downward. There we go. The glue also helps the bow stay tied. And we're done. Thank you for watching my tutorial. If you're enjoying my videos, please like, share, and subscribe.